So hello everybody, welcome to our one and only first general meeting of spring 2022. Glad you all made it. Thank you very much. And to everyone watching at home, thank you for joining us and watching here afterwards. Matthew, I always said Dominic is eating some, well, essentially Dominic for the, anyway, eating some stuff. Anyway, before we get started, we'll announce a couple of things. For one, we're gonna have a election for president of the club today. So that'll be fun. Matthew, as you may not know, is stepping down to let someone else have the opportunity. So we're gonna have a little election after I go over the events and stuff that's coming up. And then we have one and only KK6YWG. He's gonna go on a long ramble about DMR, a bunch of nerdy stuff, ask him a lot of questions. He is knowledgeable to an extent that there are many knowledgeable people, and he is on a spectrum alongside them. So to start off, couple of stuff coming up. The first one is PCRR, Pacific Coast Railroad, on Saturday. We're gonna go put some radios on trains. So we're gonna take radios. I don't think, are they commercial? Yeah, commercial radios. We're gonna go put them on trains. If you like trains, if you like radios, you don't need to understand radios, you don't need to know what they are. But we can use some helping hands to take a train, take a radio, and put them together. We'll be leaving from campus at around 9, and we should get back around 1600 at 4 p.m. So if anybody else is able to help out, let us know, come join us, yell at us on the Discord. We have a channel dedicated to it. Let me know, let someone know here. Trains are cool. And then on Sunday, we have a testing session in the afternoon. As you may or may not know, on April 19th, the FCC is going to start charging a $35 application fee. I believe that's in. And now they were originally going to give us 90 days notice. And then I think they said 30 days. And then they settled on 27 days. So that's life is a highway. So if you've been thinking about getting your license or doing the stuff upgrading, well, I'll be as careful as I can when I say this. There is information coming out that the FCC might not be charging for upgrades to like general and extra. The AWL is saying that. However, there's some conflicting information. Not everyone is completely sure about that. But to be safe, get upgraded now, get licensed now, do your thing within the next, I believe, 2.5 weeks. We'll see what happens on April 19th, I guess. Hopefully they won't charge for upgrades. That'd be cool. But it's up to you how you wish to interpret that. But yeah, Sunday afternoon, we have a session at 1500 local in room 129. It'll be the 2 people I have signed up so far prefer in person. That's what we're doing. But if you would prefer a virtual session over Zoom, I can get that set up too. Or anytime within the next 2 weeks, if you're not free on Sunday, yell at me immediately as soon as you want to test, and I will, or we will, make it happen. There's also plenty of random sessions online. But yeah, now's the time to get tested. And then a couple weeks later, we have a bunch of other stuff. We have open house, some transmitter hunts, and we also have some volunteering events where we're going to help people on bikes that not crash into each other. I'll be in the middle of the quarter. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun one. So I'll stop talking now. And actually, I won't stop talking, but I'll talk about something else. The election. which we're gonna do nowish. So new CPARC president, bada bing, bada boom. We have one candidate who is running so far, that's gonna be nominated. He had a theater emergency, so he can't make it. But Matthew is gonna be his proxy. Yeah, I guess to start off, if anybody else wants to run for president, now is the time to speak up.
I nominate Hunter.
Hunter, would you like to be president? Let it be posted for the online community record that Hunter is appears to be shaking his head. Fantastic. Would nominate proxy like to make a statement as a candidate?
Yes. Hello, I'm Dalvide. That's a great way to start. So yeah, I've done cool stuff like make a golf cart, and it's weird speaking in the first person. Well, he's done some cool stuff. Yeah, making a golf cart, getting this whole ARDC grant together, getting on being the president fall quarter. And yeah, he's done a lot for the club, and I believe he deserves the role as president his last quarter here, now that he can, and I think I'll do a good job. And then myself, speaking as Matthew, will still help him out since I know he's a busy fella, as they say. So I'm looking to schedule some cool meetings, presenters, and stuff like that. No, I'm not saying that Jack isn't cool, but yeah, looking to do cool stuff like that, and keep the projects up, keep the events up, and working with the whole community and making sure this club grows and becomes better and stuff like that. I yield my time to the other candidate, Hunter.
Hunter, would you like to say something with your open time?
I think Davide would be a great president.
I think what Hunter is trying to say is if he's president, he will drag the club to the ground. He will spend all of our money and we will not be able to function anymore. And he will do lots of events without input submitted so that the club will shut down.
It's a very humble statement.
Yes. Anybody else?
Only one candidate?
You can write someone in if you want.
There is another option.
Yeah, Jack, would you like to discuss how the voting will proceed?
Yes, the voting, thank you everyone. So the votings will happen on Cal Poly Now. If you're not a member of the club on Cal Poly Now, this counts as you being an active member, so you're now an officially active member. So yeah, if you want to vote, let me know your name, and I'll add you to the Cal Poly Now organization. But for everyone else, the election has been published on the Cal Poly Now. You have to just go on Cal Poly Now, and actually I gotta hit the publish button. Display an alert. Save. I clicked publish, but it did not do.
So again, anybody here is technically an active member, and anybody who has participated in a meeting or event within the last quarter. So if you're watching this later and you've come to, like on YouTube or the recording, and you've come to a meeting in the past or an event within the past quarter, you are also a member, you're able to vote. And
Yes, and the voting is open. Technically, it started at 6:30, but I didn't publish it until 6:53, so I hope no one's too mad at me. But I'll publish this on the Discord, and voting will be open for 24 hours roughly, so until 6:30 p.m. tomorrow.
yeah, so if you're watching this later on YouTube, for example, you have until it's before March 1st at 6:30 p.m., 18:30 local Pacific Daylight Time. You can get on Cal Poly Now, let us know on the Discord or email if you need any help, and you can participate in the voting if you are a member.
Also, our organization has no officers listed on Cal Poly.
That's
We're
fantastic.
gonna fix that.
We do have officers in there, but I guess they're just not listed on the main page.
Says officers, this club is no officers.
Okay, well, this is why we need a president, I guess, so make sure to cast your votes. I thought, back in the last year, I added everybody. But I guess I got, I didn't put it set up properly.
Yeah, last year, it was a properly.
Well, this is still,
I can see the officers if I sign in.
oh, yeah, that's it. Because if you
Yeah, you have to
it's
sign in, yeah.
It's like, you have to join, you have to follow someone on LinkedIn in order to see what they say. You know, it's common.
Well, yeah, it's on the California, the link is actually on the Discord, I think. I think you might have to go, there's a special link that you have to go to. There's a special election.
No, it's on the Cal Poly now as well. It's
Oh, you
election
can see
time.
the alert. Okay, sweet. Yes, it said there's an alert made, so yeah, have at it. Ballot should be pretty simple. I mean, there's very few instructions. I put a lot of work in that.
Okay.
It's all 5 minutes.
Okay. That's how we do it.
It's got a lot of complex features on it too. You can add like multiple people, and you can add like checkboxes. I mean, you can really do this to make they call
Checkboxes.
it an election, but you can make it to do any kind of like really official poll. Something for this.
We should do marketing, EOC surveys and stuff.
All right, well, while people are voting, shall I get started?
Oh, yeah, sure, in a second, real quick, actually, I forgot to, can I get does who wants to test sometime soon, not necessarily Sunday?
We
Oh,
te-
yeah,
we test for like preparing for another exam.
yeah, get your general, or sorry, your extra,
Extra, huh? Okay, let's see.
so Ryan, you want to get extra
Before the fee.
before the fee?
For the fee, huh? All right, I'd love to do it for free. Yeah, well, there you go. But
You what?
sometime soon. Wait, when is the 19th?
Maybe not before the fee.
When is the 19th?
Okay, sometime soon, it's
Oh,
a
it's Tuesday,
weekly,
okay. Yeah, what time though? Like what time?
it's a weekly or 4.
We can do any time.
Okay, yeah, so, we have the session set up for Sunday afternoon at 3, in this building, but if you can't make it then, just send me a message. Or I'll get back to you, since I'll probably remember who wanted to, and anytime that works for you, anytime that I'm free, or anytime that I can find someone else who's free to make a session, we'll make it happen. And here I'm willing to do whatever it takes. 2 a.m. 2 a.m. testing session, whatever you need to get you tested, especially if you want to do it before the meeting. And if you want to do it after 2 hours, we'll also be able to do it whenever that attendance people.
It is.
Cool. I love it. Ryan, are you free on Sunday? Want to do Sunday or later?
I don't know, my family's gonna be here.
Okay, we can do later.
I don't know about Sunday. I think it's way too soon for me.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's Sunday. Ooh.
And for anybody who's watching this who is testing on Sunday, you can join us tomorrow night during HF Fridays, and we'll do some study, or if you're testing whatever, we can do some study tomorrow night.
I don't know if this might be more of a study. The HF's kind of out of commission right now.
Okay, well, it'll be,
Oh, it's not out of
It's
commission.
almost fully back.
it'll
The
be,
filters and auto switching stuff won't be here till like July, but
okay, it'll be almost fully back. HF plus study session plus socialization.
it should be back by Friday. I want to finish it tonight.
Wait, what happens every Friday? What?
HF Friday, so we meet at the Shack and we do, it's called HF Fridays, but we often just hang out and do other, listen to HF while talking, while studying, while doing whatever you want.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, so tomorrow at 6. On the Shack, I'll send out reminders. Well, and without further ado, I will stop talking. I don't know what everyone is really waiting for.
Oh, don't say that. Can't be like that. All right, everybody. Good evening. My name is Jack. KK6YWG. Is there any on the Zoom? For those of you on the Zoom, are you able to see the screen shared in full? Matthew turned off his camera and Zach left. So, all right, everyone. Yeah. I will move this. Anyway, let's see if it's recording, if it's showing.
It's fine.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jack, KK6YWG, club member 5.5 years now. I've been here a while, but I'm really interested in digital radio, things like that. And EE, did my undergrad here and now grad program. So I've got a little bit of experience with this. But for those of you who are interested in digital radio, I know that it's kind of a new thing. I'll explain what I'm talking about, by the way, in a second. But there's a lot of new kind of attention in the past decade or so, especially in the last few years, because things are really cheap, relatively, I should say. There's really been interest in like digital radio, linking systems together, talking all over the world with it. So I think it'll be a pretty interesting presentation. And yeah, if you have questions at any time, feel free to ask.
Click and then do it because Zoom is coming up.
So yeah, today we're going to talk about digital voice. What are its advantages and disadvantages versus analog communications? So when I talk about analog, I'm talking about communications like this, just transmit. Analog, what I mean by that is analog is a continuously of your voice is a continuous wave. That's like an analog signal, it's something that's continuous. There's no like digital, as opposed to a digital thing, which has discrete levels and is measured. And in reality, like a digital signal is the same thing. But there's a difference, right? We know intuitively, you don't have to know any kind of, I'm not going to know what it is like a EE lecture. But yeah, you just know intuitively there's a difference between analog and digital signals. Right? So we'll talk about what that means for voice, and, as well as I'm going to explain what digital mobile radio DMR is as a protocol, and we'll look at it. Should be a lot of fun. So instead of continuously modulating your voice, right, in the analog signal, we capture it with some sort of analog to digital converter. So we, instead of doing operations on your voice, like an analog radio does, basically it's continuously sending your voice and it's doing FM frequency modulation in real time. So analog signal. Digital radio, it has to do a lot more steps, right, to be able to do things with your voice. So inside the radio, there's something called an analog to digital converter. And the opposite of that is digital to analog converter, right? It goes between the two. And this allows us to turn your voice, which is an analog signal, right? It's just, what is it? It's variations in sound pressure, right? Your voice. And then that gets put into a transducer, a microphone, transfer that from a pressure wave into a microphone signal. And we digitize that with an analog digital converter. Don't worry if it's getting confusing. I'll show a picture that makes more sense. But long story short, what it allows us to do is a lot more complicated things than we could do with analog voice. So with analog voice, you can kind of have like voice scramblers or things, or little filters, analog filters that will make you maybe sound a little better. But the nice thing about digital voice, there's some disadvantages to it, that we can really get rid of them. I mean, once we digitize the signal for your voice, we can actually do a lot of mathematical operations to see, what kind of things are actually, like what is the frequency content in your voice, right? There's different people have different pitches for their voice, right? Different music stuff. There's like a saxophone, like what's it called, like a tenor or something, like different voices, and different pitches, right? And people have overlapping but different ranges of voice. And the way that their frequencies are spread, or the way that the frequencies are distributed in their voice is different. So what digital voice tends to do is it tends to get rid of information in your voice that isn't necessary to send over the radio. So if somebody's screaming and they've got a really high pitched whine and they're screaming at the radio, but they got a really high pitched signal, it might filter that out using some sort of signal processing algorithm to actually do that. Because you don't need to send that over the radio. Right? There's things that are more pleasant to the ear, and people sometimes would just like to have everybody kind of sound the same. Or uniformly. Everybody sounds like a robot. It's kind of what people like to say on digital voice. And you can also, a lot of the neat tricks that you can do, or you can actually predict, you can only sample parts of the voice, and then you can predict what the voice is going to sound like in the parts that you didn't sample. Basically, you can reconstruct that, and then you're sending like only part of your voice, right? But you don't need to send all that information. And sending information over the air is costly in terms of numbers. It takes more, like if your transmitter is on the whole time versus if it only needs to send signal part of the time, right? That's more or less battery life you have. There's more like computational things that you need to send more sort of type of error correction, right? To prevent the signal from being misrepresented. So, but you can do, long story short, it's more efficient. I'll say there's some downsides to it. Mainly how it sounds. So yeah, analog voice is pretty straightforward. This is AM, so AM radio, right? It's modulating the amplitude of the wave is based on the signal, right? For FM, frequency modulation, the amplitude or the frequency of the wave is what changes. Well, I say modulation, I think that's what's changing. And this is an example of an analog kind of continuous thing. In digital voice, it's a lot more complex. You have a microphone, and then this kind of stuff, this analog inputs and the filters and things are pretty normal, right? Like you would have this on any kind of thing if you want to probably filter out things in general. But then you have the analog to digital converter, and then you have something called a vocoder, which is a voice encoder chip, and that turns your signal not necessarily into something that's ready to be sent right away, but it basically takes the, what we would call, if you're familiar with the audio world, an uncompressed audio signal, or this is what is directly the output of the analog to digital conversion, right? This is all the information in the voice, and then digitally, it goes into here, and this does some really complex math. And I mean complex literally, but also mathematical sense. Right? There's like all sorts of things going on with like sines and cosines and Fourier transforms and all this frequency stuff. Right? That it's analyzing your voice, and then out of here, that signal. And then the same process is done on a C. But as you can see, I mean, this is a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of chips, and there's a whole political kind of fight right now over, well, I don't know if it's been ongoing on and off for about 25 years, but there's a real big fight because this chip, essentially for all the radio protocols to talk, for radio to talk to another radio, this chip needs to be the same, basically. And this chip is proprietary. The standard might be open, but if manufacturers all agree to choose proprietary chip, who says that maybe, maybe they all got together and, the representative of the chip was there at lunch or something, and they managed to convince them all to use this chip so that they would have unlimited. I'm not saying there's a conspiracy, but I'm just saying, I mean, there might, but because there's only like one brand that's used, so there probably is a conspiracy. But the point of this is, yeah, there's a lot of politics on that. Yeah, I was gonna say something else, but I think for legal reasons. For legal reasons, yeah, I cannot advertise whether or not implementations of this exist. For research, I think people have attempted to recreate those chips, if for research purposes, I should say. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here. There's like there's all this stuff like this forward error correction. There's all sorts of error correction going on. Doing all sorts of synthesis, and then it's able to send. This is kind of like showing. This is actually a product from the company that makes it. So yes, so how do bits get sent over the radio? Well, we saw that there was the AM and the FM running continuously for a while in the analog case. But when your voice gets what's called quantized, turned into a digital signal, but the analog digital converter, right, it's represented as a digital signal. And I showed that basically it represents the value of like the voltage of your voice, right, as a binary number. So in this case, there's 4 levels here. This is really low resolution and low resolution analog digital converter. Typically, voice analog digital converters for on your phone or any kind of hobbyist. I mean, if you're in the audio world, people can really get into fights about this stuff. Oh, well, you need 14 bits of really fine resolution on this stuff. I'm gonna get into the weeds, but long story short, 8-bit audio, like this stuff is plenty for those people. I mean, Spotify, I think, plays 8-bit audio, and then people complain that the 14-bit, digital to analog converter from out of their phone is like doesn't sound good. I don't know. If you put garbage in, one thing, you put garbage in, you get garbage in. But what that means is we can do, if we know the bits that represent the voice, right? We can send that out over the radio. In this case, I've represented something that's only sending 1 bit at a time, but you can have what they call higher order modulations. And that basically means you can send multiple bits at a time. But in this case, right, this is kind of the FSK frequency shift keying. So we send, depending on the data, it's FM, but we're keeping, remember how in the FM case, we had, the signal was constantly changing, right? The frequency was changing. If you were to sample this at one point, high and low, right? You see that there's 2 different frequencies. And that's what's happening in digital case. That based on the voltage, right? It's the same thing. That frequency shift keying is frequency modulation in digital. By the way, if anybody has any questions, like stuff like anything coming overwhelming, don't worry if you don't understand it. Like as you get more experience with it. But get the idea, you can use different frequencies to represent different bits of approach. And actually, one of our CPARC members has generated a video to show you what that looks like. I made this video. Oh, it might not be showing over the Zoom, actually. Is anybody listening to the Zoom?
We can see it, we just can't hear it.
Okay, well, there's no audio, so that's okay. We can't see. Yeah, so you can see, you can change the brightness as the data is changing, the frequency is changing. You can do this with phase as well. You change the phase of the signal. See, the signal is phasing. And basically, this is the degrees in the phase, right? It's jumping back and forth. Don't worry if you don't understand, but it's figuratively and literally has to do with complex topics. Don't worry. One second.
Well, if anyone wonders what it is. If anyone is wondering how I've been communicating with the FAA,
Oh, sorry, Kevin, I'm sorry. No, I stopped sharing my screen because I thought I was sharing some compromising YouTube playlists,
good.
but,
Well, I guess that's why you do incognito.
yeah.
Yes, right.
No, it was just, I was listening to a bunch of like, some random music playlist that was like philosophical music or something. Okay, but anyways, the point is, so with digital voice, this is this is a chart of audio quality versus signal level. And this one, we can clearly see, wow, digital has a great advantage everywhere. I mean, like, really, you wouldn't want a digital radio? And it's kind of funny, right? I mean, this image was made by a company that sells digital radios. So you kind of got to think, maybe maybe they might be a little biased there. But anyways, the point is, digital generally at low, at high signal to noise ratios. So this is if you have mostly strong signal here, right? Your audio quality compared to digital and analog, it's pretty much the same. Especially for us, the reason why a lot of public safety users, like police and fire departments, won't switch to a digital system is because, one, it's expensive, but two, if the radios, radios don't support already, it's expensive. But mostly because the audio quality, a lot of times their users are relying on this region here, where upgrading to digital is just going to cost more money. It's going to sound great. I think this graph is very generous. I think sound worse. So a lot of times, like on us, we have digital and analog repeaters, and I prefer to use the analog. I think it sounds much better. Even though I'm a fan of digital, I'm the one reading this, right? Push or DMR, but I personally think I would honestly say analog sounds better for our application of like very high signal noise ratio, very local use. And there's also some stuff about, like you can jam, well, not jam, jamming is illegal. Like my point is, if you needed to like hold your push to talk button down, you can hear that there's like jamming going on the frequency. You can say, okay, like, hey, someone needs to unkey the radio, or you can like get someone's attention by like trying to break in, and they'll hear jamming on the other side. On a digital signal, it doesn't really know how to deal with that. It's either all or nothing. But it's either you're receiving or you aren't. And especially you'll see this kind of curve at the end here that quality after a certain point should drop down like a rock. It's everything digital works, and I think this is the degenerate system. And I think this curve, there is a point at very low signal strengths where analog wins out over digital. You can just, your brain is very good at picking analog signals out of the noise and hearing voices out, like very faint things, where digital might have a really hard time. Does that kind of make sense? So obviously, few different plots of this, right? This is a very much like a subjective, I mean, I think a lot of people would refer to like 10 dB as a more acceptable log. It's very hard to quantify like how good, what is good for you. When you hear a signal, is that good? It's going to be a little better. It's a very minute, everybody's different, and everybody has different perceptions of that, right? So this is kind of, to say that you need to have this, they're probably conservative about this estimate. Like some people are going to use, up here, they might prefer a cleaner signal. But yeah, there's different kinds of digital modes. So the one I'm going to be talking about is DMR, digital mobile radio. There's a whole association for it. Each kind of major radio manufacturer, if they're not in cahoots with another one, they have their own protocol, and of course, none of them work together because they're not. They want to make money. Right? They're not going to sell you a radio that can work on their competitor's system. Although some Kenwood, so NXDN is Kenwood's digital protocol, and Kenwood does sell radios that can do P25. P25 is an open public safety standard, so it's not necessarily tied to manufacturer. There's a lot of those, but NXDN is kind of Kenwood specific. But Kenwood actually recently, in the last few years, has been selling radios like NXDN, DMR, and so they're really kind of branching out. But D-Star is a digital one, and then Yaesu System Fusion, Yaesu Fusion is another one. These are kind of ham. D-Star and Fusion are ham specific modes. You have to buy a ham radio that has the specific digital capability to do that. And you can link them together, but radio to radio, they can't just talk. And there's actually, I forgot to include another one. There's one that hams are developing another one, and they made there's like a political fight about it. But there's another one called M17 that's supposed to be a ham design, an open one. Of course, that one is going to not be able to talk to entities by default, right? It's a different protocol, so we can't talk to everybody. They want to replace all of these. It's a very ambitious thing. Deal with it. Yeah, DMR. So it's originally a business standard formed about 15, 20 years ago. It's called Moto Turbo in some places. This is Motorola's company, so Motorola Solutions, who makes Motorola radios. So you might be familiar with Motorola, like the company. They split 10, it was a while ago. But they now, one of them splits the cell phone side, split it like Motorola Razr phone, right? Motorola split into two companies, Motorola Solutions, which handles the two-way radio side, and then Motorola Mobility, and now I think they got bought by Lenovo, which is bought by Google. So it's all essentially that cell phone side is owned by Google now. But Motorola Solutions still makes radios, that's their business. They've been doing that for decades now, probably at least half a century now. And they have their own kind of, I mean, this is effectively the same, but they call it Motor Turbo. There's a few more. So, go ahead. You have a question? Matthew, you have a question? No, I think that's not. All right. Yeah. So there's 3 tiers in DMR. Tier 1 is simplex, which was radio to radio communication. No repeater. Tier 2 is no repeater, and then tier 3 is what we call trumped, which is where you can have multiple. This is actually kind of cool. Explain it. But basically, trumped system. You have one control channel where like all the radios listen to. So okay, so I should start. The reason why what they call a trunk system exists is because there's you have to have a license for a frequency in like a commercial, and even for public safety customers. And there's only so many frequencies. You can say you only have 15 frequencies or something, but you have a police department or public works or something that has hundreds of users, and they all need to, well, they don't all need to be able to talk at the same time, but you'll find that it gets really inefficient to have multiple kinds of traffic, right? Like people talking about public works stuff, people talking about police stuff or fire stuff on the same frequency, right? So they want to be on like different kind of channels. Basically, the way a trunk system works is you have a pool of frequencies. And the idea is all the radios are listening to this thing called a trunking controller. And then when they want to talk, they say, hey, I want to talk to everybody who's on the fire channel. And there's no set frequency for the fire channel. Essentially, the trunking controller says, it reaches into the pool of unused frequencies and says, hey, there's nobody talking on this frequency. You can all talk. Everybody on the fire channel, go to this frequency. You can talk. And it's really, really like a beautiful concept, right? It's because it's able to make use of basically, it's kind of like a statistical way too, right? Like you're making use of stuff that is technically free, but it's better than having like one channel. There might be some talk groups, right? So I'm already getting this. Okay, so there might be some users on the trunk system, right? Like a school bus driver that only needs to talk once a day. say, hey, I'm starting to drive the bus now. They don't need a whole channel, a whole radio system just for them to talk one time a day, right? They need to go once, in the morning and the evening to say, talk to the thing, hey, we want to talk to everybody who's on the school bus channel. Everybody who's on the school bus channel listens and say, okay, we got it. But they don't need a whole radio, like they don't need individual radio sites, right, for the whole day. That's kind of the purpose here. And it allows you to save on equipment. So trunk is really cool. It's used in like the P25 standard for water trunks, especially like big metropolitan areas. The point is you can do trunks with DMR. Like this is especially I think this is common in Europe a lot. This is like the DMR is used a lot in Europe for trunk stuff. Sometimes if you have a university, they might have their communications on a trunk. Actually, I know near my home in San Diego, UC San Diego has all their hospitality and like housing staff stuff on a Motorola DMR, this motor turbo trunk system. And it's funny, you can try to listen to one, if you listen to any one of these frequencies on their system, you might only get a part of a conversation, right? Because all the frequencies that they're using are jumping around. It's just kind of dynamically allocated as they're needed. Hence why if you're making it, if you're trying to listen to this, you need to be able to hear what the controller thing is saying, to say, hey, what frequency, then you tell the radio to choose that frequency as well, just like radio. Anyways, the point is, most hand use is tier 2 through a repeater, sometimes it'll be tier 1. And then with this in the trunk stuff, I think there's a regulation on there too. Most of the equipment here is single band radios. So in the commercial, what I mean by single band is it can only do UHF, so 400 to 480 megahertz or something. Our radios, ham radios, a lot of them are dual band, so they can do VHF and UHF. So 40 megahertz. In the commercial world, nobody really does that, so it's mostly single band. So if you're looking for a dual band DMR radio, you're gonna have to go ham stuff. But the benefit of that is a lot of this commercial computers actually really well, much better than a lot of like cheapo ham radios. And DMR, kind of the secret sauce here, their secret sauce is analog. You're using your frequency, your channel, right, all the time. DMR, they split stuff up and they send data to what's called 2 time splits. So it's alternating. It's using the same amount of frequency, same amount of spectrum, but it's differs in time. So you can have 2 simultaneous conversations going on in the same amount of frequency space. Frequency is a license, and a license costs money. So ultimately, the way they market this is it saves you money. And you basically get 2 repeaters for the price of 1. You can have 2 separate conversations on the same slot. How it does the synchronization of these, so each one of these is a 30 millisecond slot. How it does the synchronization is kind of magic. I won't get into it. Mostly because I don't understand how it does it. But it is kind of, it seems like magic to me. There's a big protocol, like there's an announcement every 60 milliseconds that's to like synchronize your radio to know when to transmit, right? You need to know, hey, I want to transmit on slot 2, so I need to wait until the announcement and then wait 30 milliseconds. Yeah, divides it into doubles the capacity, but also if you think about it, your radio can usually only transmit on 1 slot at a time, right? So this effectively you're transmitting half of the time with the channel. That's cool because it actually gives you like twice as much. It gives you better battery. It's like a 40% increase. It's not linear, but it gives you like a 40% increase in battery life. Just digital. So a lot of hotels, schools really like this, and they're charging radio. And like we saw with the signal quality chart, that you can turn down the transmitter power. So this will basically mean you have more of a weak signal, right? You can use less power on the transmitter. You'll have a weaker signal, but it will sound the same. And power is electricity, and electricity costs money. So at the end of the day, you can save some power too, or save some money too. Okay. So saving you a lot of boring explanation about the protocol. Two things are sent in a DMR transmission, namely who you want to talk to and who you want. Two things, there's what I talk about a talk group, that's kind of like a group of people listening to the same thing. So calls are made to a group rather than, they do allow you to call radio if it's a business protocol, right? So you can say, hey, I'm a hotel user and I want to talk to one person on the maintenance team. You can do that. You can also do private calls and things like that. You can also do all calls like an emergency. Basically, most calls into a group. And groups usually exist based on like an area or interest or a club or something like that. So, for example, there's California, 3106, CPARC, we have our own group that we listen to. The college students group is 9500. And then you can send your radio ID, but this sends a number, not your call sign. So just transmitting and not saying your call sign over the voice, over the radio, is actually not satisfied FCC requirement for ID on DMR. There's a little bit changing with this, something that does allow you to send your radio, your call sign, but for the most part, you should assume that it's not being sent. This is in contrast to other digital radio protocols, especially the ham specific ones. Those ones by default, I mean, their engineering was like, yeah, we need to send the call sign with the transmission to identify, because it was designed for hams, by hams for hams, right? So, basically, it's a 24-bit number. Don't worry about the math, but 16 million possible users in like some system. You can think of all hand users as in like the same system. You're obviously never going to have 16 million people in a hotel. But yeah, basically, radio can store contacts on the radio to say like, okay, when there's all I know is that a number is coming to me, right? And then I can match the number. If everybody agrees which number belongs to which person, then you can store those a registry of which number is for which person inside a radio. And you can actually have that downloaded. And there's a database of who has registered for an ID. And right now, there are about 215, as I check it as of today, there are 215,000 IDs. The problem with this is radios can usually hold only 200,000 contacts, and you got to choose. Now that it's getting up to the limit, you can't just download everybody. Realistically, you're also never going to talk to everybody. So a lot of times people will only choose, like, they'll choose people that they talk to frequently. But this is actually kind of going a little bit obsolete because there is a new feature that allows you to send your call signs and the data that shows up on the radio. So I think that might actually count as an ID. Some people get upset about it. So, oh yeah, there's like a whole political thing there. Downright ugly truth. Yeah, there's like I saw a video or a post today about someone was saying, oh, you know, the system, like when they originally, so there's a few different DMR networks. There's different reasons why there's multiple. Rennmeister is the one that we use for our repeater. It means fire chief in German. Everyone's curious. And this one stands for Rural Amateur Radio Club, although not everybody in this club works for Rural. But basically, this one was the one who started like the naming convention. There was long story short, people were upset about how that ID was. Like they don't run out of space to allocate people by number. Like generally, the IDs, if your number is similar to another person's, like if you have a similar valued number, that means you're generally in the same physical area. But now they've allocated very small amounts of numbers to people. Those areas are getting more popular. Long story short, they're going to just make it at this point. They kind of gave up on trying to do it properly. Yeah, DMR, all the repeaters in a digital system. So in the analog system, they're sending voice. The analog repeaters usually aren't linked together. But digital repeaters, right? You want the whole point is to send your data on the internet and stuff. So yeah, you talk to people. This is one in Belgium. Something called a master server. And how it goes together. And yeah, there's different talk groups, so you choose, like, basically the repeater owner chooses what talk groups are on the repeater. So we have a few repeater owners, what we call like the system admins for our DMR repeater. So myself at the moment, and then KK6YWG, Ethan, and then Dominic, 60 is also one. And basically it means that we just have access to the web browser where we can choose. We can choose which ones we want on here. But right now, I think we've only set up a few. But some repeater owners like to put, it's a tactical decision, right? Because if there's like a lot of these busier talk groups, they're going to be what's called on, statically allocated on all the time. And if there's any traffic on here, those will take they'll take priority, or you'll hear all this stuff on here, and somebody who's trying to talk on other things, like they won't be able to use it. So there's kind of balance into how you set these up, and it's all on the discretion of what people want. Some people are very stingy too about what they want on their repeater. Like some repeaters will say you can only have one other talk group. One comes like two, and then one of them will be like the local or the audio test. That's it. Anything else? Other people will be like, oh yeah, you can put on like a world, you can set up all this stuff, you can get anything you want, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, so there's a real spectrum of what people want there. CPARC's DMR repeater. This is our repeater. It's made up of two just used mobile radios. We actually fried a couple of these the other day. We were trying to put the repeater back together, and we accidentally shorted some stuff together, and we fried it. But thankfully, we have a bunch of these. So yeah, just mobile radio. We got knocked to a computer fan on the back, which is blowing in like that in case it transmits for a while and it gets warm. We don't want it to get too warm, and also these radios are kind of smart in that when they get too warm, they turn down the power output, so to keep the power output at max, like keep forcing air on it. They get this temperature blowing. And a little duplexer for us to put the trailer or seat on. And it's running this thing called Pi Star Raspberry Pi as a computer control, which is like that. Yeah, the CPARC time slots are, we just have CPARC one time slot more than everybody else on time slot. So we don't really have a lot of users, so we kind of just give people free reign to say, hey, but it's, if you key up the worldwide talk group that's constantly active, people are always talking about on this one, and we're trying to have a conversation on this, I'm going to be very upset. Someone's be like, I can't use their repeater, and then, or some people will be like, sometimes this happens if they don't know how these are allocated, and then they key up the really busy one on the one they're not supposed to, and then they look and they say, oh, oops, I was supposed to do it on the other one. So they go and do it on this one, which means now both of these are transmitting the same thing, and that really is yeah, not that I've done that before. Yeah, speaking from personal experience. And there's also this kind of cool parrot talk group that I'll test out. It's actually really cool. Conversations. Oh yeah, there's also these things called the DMR hotspot, which you use ad coverage and it's not a repeater nearby, so you know, a little hotspot, $50 to $100. Yeah, there's this board that can do all sorts of like software control, and all sorts of digital voice protocols. There's a lot of these to on. You can choose whatever talkers you want. So a lot of people, when they get fed up with their local repeater, or they want to have more control over who they talk to, they'll just set up one of these. And yeah, if you're interested in buying a DMR radio, you can buy this surplus commercial equipment. This stuff's going down in price now, the older stuff, but used Motorola gear. But it has its limitations. It's not programming. You can't change frequencies easily like a ham radio. You also can't. You can't talk. There's single band, right? So you can't do dual band. You would need to carry two radios, and if you need to change the frequency for any reason, you have to go back to the computer. But obviously, they're meant for business users, right? They fire once and forget. The hand market is starting to mature now. We're seeing this thing called Anytone. This is so fun. I love this radio. The Anytone 878 and 868. They're now going down, but you can get them used for like $100, $150, less than $150 now. Which used to be like an analog only radio. It used to be like a good one, really good one. Used to be $200, $300. Now, even like the fully featured radios are coming down in price. So, especially with some of the patents and stuff expiring on the more litigated pieces. Some really cool stuff. Yeah, I think that's all I got. I'll do a quick demo. If anybody wants to see. So I'm going to key up the parrot talk groups. That's the audio check. KK6 and YWG testing. I'm going to wait a second. So you can see it sounds robotic, right? It's like really kind of a robotic voice. But now I'm going to key up CPARC. We'll see if anybody's there. This is KK6YWG. Is anybody listening on the CPARC group tonight? I don't think there's going to be anybody listening. but I'll key up one of the other ones that is less busy. More busy. Okay. So I'm going to key up this what's called the DMR of anarchy. It's like this. There's different like fun talk groups and people like groups that are affiliating us with the talk group. Peers. I don't know if there's a conversation going on. So you will usually want to wait a few seconds, right? See if there's a conversation going on. So you don't want to step over. Anybody out there? We're in the middle of a conversation. And also, it's kind of more difficult than an analog radio, right? To tell, like, to gauge when someone is done transmitting, you know, like when they're, like, because only one person can do, like, if you hear right before you transmit, you hear like someone else transmitting, it's very easy on analog to tell. Right, like, oh, I'm about to step over somebody. But yeah, this is KK6YWG. I'm looking for a quick radio check. DMR here. I'm going to give a brief presentation about DMR, and I'd like to demonstrate that I'd like to be able to speak to someone in the Grandmaster network. See if anybody comes back. Nobody came back. There might be someone. I wonder if anybody will come back. No, nobody listening. There's usually one or two people that I know that are always listening. Yeah. Yeah, they're like, this Jack guy.
Oh, no.
No, they don't know. Nobody. I haven't built up a following. This is KK6YWG looking for a quick radio check. And we're going to come back with their name and location. We're getting a brief demonstration of DMR right now. I'd like to demonstrate that DMR works. So if anybody's out there, appreciate the radio checks. This is KK6YWG.
If you can hear me, I tried to yell at Matthew and Ryan to get on, but they're too expert.
Copy. Nope, no
They
problem.
might be on. They might be on when they come back out.
Copy. No problem. I'm on a different talk group too, so I won't hear it. Hey, nobody.
Oh, there it is coming.
Well, we can key up another one. I need to unkey the other one first.
Yes. Looks like everyone's busy, huh? All right.
Yeah. I mean,
How much that Anytone? How much did it cost?
this one, okay, so I bought this brand new, and this is the top of the line version that they sell. It was $300.
Oh,
It was a lot of money. Yeah, I mean, I said this is, but this has been, I had to like justify it to myself, right?
Took a lot of us yelling at.
Took a lot of it. Yeah, well, I had been, yeah, it's like a lot, it is a lot. I mean, I had like a Baofeng for a long time, the $20 radio.
Yeah, I have that like UE5R Pro, whatever they call it. Yep.
I mean, the UV5R is a great radio. And you'll, I mean, like, if you grow out of it, right, you might find that you're interested in a DMR radio. But you can get cheaper versions. This was the version, the only reason.
Hold on, is that a watch?
No, it's a Bluetooth push to talk. Bluetooth, but Bluetooth inside it, and the idea is.
No, that device to the back.
Yeah, this, yeah.
Push the, oh, it says PTT, never mind. Okay.
It's not like an Apple Watch.
Oh my God.
But yeah, you can do, it has a Bluetooth module inside. That's actually like one of the reasons why it costs a little bit more is because it has Bluetooth inside.
Do you have it as well?
The push. Yeah, I don't have it on me.
Oh, okay.
But you can, but yeah, I should have brought it. But yeah, it's really cool because I'll be riding on my bike and I can put it on my handlebars. The idea is like you can put it on your steering wheel when you're driving. And then because it has Bluetooth, it can hook up to your car's hands-free system. So you can actually talk on the radio through the hands-free system while driving. And it's really cool. I want to design a custom push-to-talk button for my bike. It talks on Bluetooth. And then also have a Bluetooth headset that can go on my bike now. With the radio, I think that'd be really cool. But yeah, it has this radio can send like your location over the air. It has a GPS inside. It has a bunch of things. So there's there's different levels of it. There's the cheaper ones, like I said, the cheaper ones that do not just it can the more entry level versions, they're getting cheaper. Easily for under 60. Yeah, it's still, I mean, it's still a decent amount of money. But I think you'll find that it's like, it's an investment. And if you treat it nicely, it will last a long time. These are definitely going to last a long time. They're meant to be thrown around like business radios. Like I said, the utility of them, it's a radio, you can't change the frequencies. You can't do a lot of the other things. Mainly, like you can't change the frequencies. So I think the biggest, without the computer, without the programming keyboard software, it's the biggest reason why people don't use commercial radios. But if you know, like you're going to be on a pier that's always going to be around each other, and you're always, you only use one radio, like CPARC, the repeater frequency doesn't change. But the problem is CPARC repeater just went down the other day. The UHF one just went down the other day. And if you had a UHF only radio, then you can't talk on CPARC. You got to go get pull out of the VHF commercial. You got to have two radios in one line. The nice thing on the dual radios is just change the channel. That's it. And like you can do what they call cross band, like transmit on VHF or receive on VHF, vice versa. Cross band stuff. And I was actually doing that because the UHF transmitter was broken. So I was transmitting on the UHF side, so the repeater was usually on UHF. I was receiving the repeater on UHF. Just because I happen to, for whatever reason, my antenna works a lot better to get out. But then someone shut down the receiver this morning. So I can't do that. But now it's back up. But yeah. Any questions? I think I'm going to stop the recording.
Great job. Alright.
We lost some of our attendance. That's fine. All right, I'm going to stop the meeting. Shouldn't be your second device. Okay, yeah, thank you.
Wait, is that Kevin? Shouldn't we learn what?